Welcome, everyone. My name is Caroline Colas. I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Thank you so much for joining us on our Lunch and Learn series with WBI. Today, we're going to be talking about how writing helps us stay resilient and connected with Jennifer Hanawald. The act of writing has been connected to health and happiness through the ages. Since the 90s, there's been an increasing explicit study into the impact of writing and specific types of writing on health and well-being. There is ample evidence that writing about difficult times helps people make sense of what happened and even identify benefits that help them heal and move forward in a positive way. Join National Board Certified Integrative Health and Wellness and Positive Psychology Coach and Whole Being Institute faculty member Jennifer Hanawald in exploring the following: how writing makes us healthier, why it might especially be a helpful tool right now, and how to get started. The goal of this talk is to share the physical and emotional benefits of writing and offer exercises to experiment with writing for your well-being. Participants will take home prompts grounded in research that they can apply straight away. To let you know a little bit about Jennifer, I'm going to introduce her right now. Jennifer, you're on the call, I believe.
Hi, Caroline. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here.
Before we begin, Jennifer, I'm just going to mute everyone so that our recording is clean, and then you'll need to unmute yourself, okay? Great.
I'm muted.
Let's go for it. So Jennifer, I just was really curious about how you got if interested or found out about the Whole Being Institute. And then also, I was really wondering about your story about writing and how that became a passion of yours.
Right. Well, the Whole Being Institute, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I jumped into their certificate in positive psychology that some of you may know about. It was SIP2. It was the second iteration of that. And at that time, it was led by Talbin Shahar, Maria Serwa, and Megan McDonough, and Phoebe Atkinson was already involved. So that was sort of an unexpected thing. I jumped into it at the last minute without knowing a lot about positive psychology at that point. And it was this transformational, incredible experience that really changed my life, set me on a new path. And from there, I went on and did the positive psychology coaching program with them. I did other coaching outside of it, but I kept coming back to WBI. So I've gotten so much out of it. And actually, a couple of years ago, I joined their faculty in the positive psychology coaching program, where I met you for the first time too, Caroline.
Yeah, that's right. You were my TA, and am I muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, and I really appreciate all your help that you gave me in that course. And I'm taking the SIP program right now and really having a wonderful time. Yes. So, but what about writing? What specifically attracted you to writing? I know it's usually very personal. I have some friends that are writers, and everyone has a story about why writing means so much to them.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that it's personal. It really is personal for me too, but actually just to start in terms of writing, connecting it back to WBI, that program that I did, and maybe you're having this experience too, Caroline, but the applications and the tools that we got through SIP that involved writing prompts were incredible, and they were part of that program that really hooked me and helped me make that material my own when I started writing about it. But just in terms of my life, I've been a journaler my whole life, and I heard the chat before where we were talking about, should you save your journals? I have so many old journals, and I always feel like it's a treasure when I come across them. I also have old laptops that I can't access anymore with journaling in them as well. So I'm a handwriting journaler. I'm a typing journaler. And yes, for me, it was very personal. I felt like through my life, I used journaling to sort of figure out what was going on, to understand myself. And I did that before I understood that that is actually a thing, that there's a science that explains, how that works. But like so many of us, I'm sure there's tons of us on this call that have used journaling in that way. And then later in life, I did actually do a journalism degree, international journalism in London, and worked as a journalist, which I think actually really supports my work as a coach, because I learned to really listen very carefully and hear people's stories and words. So, I mean, my relationship with writing is, it is where I experience flow, my greatest happiness, and it's my sustenance, I think. Yeah.
Beautiful. I know that, you know, I was a dancer. I still am a dancer. I suppose once you're a dancer, you're always a dancer. But for me, that is where I felt the most free, and that flow. And sometimes actually finding words or using words was a challenge for me, right? Because I could feel like I could express everything that I wanted to say when I was moving. Do you feel the same way about your writing, that when you're writing, that it's a little bit easier for you, or you said you find your flow, or is it just that you enter into actual flow?
Well, I'm enjoying just imagining, you know, juxtaposing, you know, dancing expression and writing expression, and so that caught my attention. But I feel at peace when I'm writing. I mean, it's challenging, it's engaging, but something is completely turned on in my brain when I'm writing. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like that is flow. Yeah. And I felt like when I move, everything makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean there aren't problems to solve, and, you know, directions, kinesthetic awareness, what's up, what's down, moving with another, but there's just like, oh, I can do this. This makes sense. So this is where I'm going to go. You know, this is next.
Well, I love that too. What I would say is, whenever I have something difficult that I'm working on, it makes such a difference to me to write about it first. And if I have anything really, really challenging, I'm gonna go to I like to say the pen, but it's really the keyboard. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna work on it, and I'm gonna work on it, and then I'm gonna sit back and use it in three-dimensional space, and then I'm still gonna go back to writing.
Beautiful. Well, that seems like a perfect segue to talk about writing for wellness. I'm really curious about what you have to say today, and also that you're going to tell us, you know, kind of how to get started, because that for a lot of professional writers, right, is a challenge. But for someone who's kind of interested in doing writing for wellness, I'm really curious about that too.
Good. Well, I can't wait to shall I go ahead and?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay. I was just going to say the best way to get started with anything, if it feels like a mountain, is just to take a small step. And so we'll do that now. And let me see if I'm going to be able to drive our slides. So yes, it works. So actually, I know I'm going to be speaking quite a lot. So I was wondering if you would start us off, Caroline, with just a little prompt to get us warmed up and interacting, because I'd love to hear what some of the people in the room have to say about this, putting us in this context.
Sure. So should I just read this aloud?
Sure, that'd be great.
So our opening prompt today is, what's a learning from one of these lunch and learns that has inspired you? And how have you already used it? Or if you're new to this call and this is your very first time being with us on a lunch and learn series, what's something you are savoring about the change in season? We really are slipping right into summer, aren't we? And so what are you savoring about this moment in time? So let's go ahead and put that in the chat, and I will go ahead and answer that myself. Gosh, I've learned so much.
I know. I had some ideas bubbling up, because I've been on several of these too, as I'll reference in a minute. But I'd love, if you already have your thought, Caroline, share it. And then I was just going to talk a little bit about what this prompt is actually, what the sort of science behind this prompt even. But
you know, I think what I've learned from every single presenter is the universality and also the uniqueness of resilience for each person. Each presenter has presented something so unique and so different and in their own way, and how they're managing this COVID situation, our racial divide. It's all so unique, and yet there's a universality to it because we're all going through it together. So that's what I think I've enjoyed the most.
That's beautiful. And that's, from your seat where you're able to see and interact with every single story and really think about it from the beginning to the end when you first have the idea to invite somebody and then listening to their story and then seeing them present and facilitate. That's awesome. Well, I'm sure there's some things coming into the chat room, but I just wanted to say, as everyone is thinking and typing, that in addition to being a nice way to just get this call started and connect, using a prompt like this is actually research-based, and it's actually how I start my coaching calls. And it's a deliberate use of Barbara Fredrickson, who was already a speaker in this series, using her work on positive emotions, where we know that when we experience a positive emotion, we open up, we're able to think more creatively, and we can acquire new ideas, build solutions more easily. So there's actually, this is not random, this use of this prompt, and this is as opposed to what happens when we experience negative emotions like fear and anxiety, which, as Dan Tomasulo said earlier in this series as well, really has the effect of putting blinders on our brain. So I'm hoping that the impact of what we hear now will just be, loosening us up so we can really jump into this great content.
Great. Well, we've got some wonderful participation in the chat. Nancy says, once I write it down, I can forget it. Judy says, the generosity and process of the Lunch and Learns helps me know. Wait, it just flipped. Hang on one second. No, the chat moved. Helps me know how very many out there have shared values. Oh, beautiful. Joanne says, I've begun journaling about gratitude regularly for the first time. Nancy says, I learned I keep moving forward, find out new things, and be intimately connected to others in spite of this pandemic. And then Ellen says, reframing narrative, character strengths, fire, micro moments, and post-traumatic growth. I use these daily. Andrea says, how to check in with myself to think how I'm actually doing. Oh, that's beautiful. Fredrickson's broaden and build theory of positive emotions. This is my first Lunch and Learn. I would like to be more in touch with my flow. Yes, Laura, that's a beautiful thing to want to know more about. Esperanza, great to see you all. Yes, great to see you as well. Janice says, this is my first Lunch and Learn. I am savoring the long, warm days and being outside with my adult children and granddaughter. Wow, and being outside, yeah. And Margie says, the passions of each of the speaker has been a special inspiration to me and has brought me joy during this time when we all need people like the ones you've brought to our homes. Aw. Nancy says, this is my first Lunch and Learn. We've got a lot of people interested in the topic today. That's great. I did, however, take writing and storytelling classes with Maria. These classes have helped me to cope, especially during this pandemic. Do you consider a therapy to write? Remember to do the Spire check-in is what I've taken away, and to focus on gratitude. And that's some beautiful prompts, wow. Everyone. Yeah.
That's incredible. And the breadth and the learnings and the inspiration, the forward motion, that's incredible. That's a perfect way to start. So thanks, everyone. And so this is what I do. I apply the research of people like Fredrickson, who study positive psychology and change in my work. And I think we'll keep moving. How does that sound?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this is just a quick look at today's plan, which you mentioned already, Caroline, how writing can boost our mental and physical health. That's where we'll start. And then we'll look at why it's especially relevant now, and think about, or not think about, but actually get you started, hopefully, on writing for your own health, wellness, and resilience with some prompts and ideas that I'll share today. And just had to put this slide up because it just made me so happy to look at all these names. When I approached putting this talk together, I thought, okay, I'll look at the work of the teachers and experts that I'm already leaning on in my coaching practice, several of whom have already spoken in this series, which is just amazing to me. So I just wanted to say, wow, we have been listening live to the authors who are in my own personal library. I have them behind me and stacked up next to me. And today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of their research and build some awareness in our group about writing and wellness. And then, as we said, offer you some ideas for how to apply that in your life. Oh, and I put stars next to the ones that had spoken.
Yeah, we've had a lot.
You have, and it continues, right? So another thing that helped me as I gathered my ideas for today that I thought was relevant was to narrow things down a bit. I wanted to look at what I use most frequently with my students and my clients to the greatest success. So I just wanted to share with you, what I actually use in my work. And these are the kinds of people that I'm talking, and it's not exhaustive, but these are the kinds of people I'm talking about, the clients and students that I've had. So if you don't see yourself in here, you belong in there. These tools work for everyone. And just a little more context. When people come to me for coaching, they're often a little stuck, right? They want some forward motion. They're looking for a partner with it to help them navigate some kind of their desired change. And what we do, coaches, what I do is listen to their stories, their narratives, and I help them envision a different story. And then through the coaching process, I help them move towards that. So today, what we're really talking about, we're really talking about writing through that lens. And I wanted to start with Margarita here, whose work on story and identity I've studied and drawn on so much. And again, she's another previous speaker. But and the reason I'm drawing on her right now is because what we're doing in coaching verbally and what we're doing when we are writing for our health, which is what we're talking about today, is we're telling our story. We're telling our story to our coach and to ourselves. And as we do this, we're learning about ourselves. We're appreciating our own values, making sense of what's happened to us, revising our perhaps limited stories about ourselves, which Tarragona delves into in her research, and we're widening our view of ourselves and ultimately changing our stories, making it more aligned with what we really want. And I would love it, Caroline, if you would read Margarita's quote too. I'm going to lean on you for some of the quote reading, if that's okay, just to give.
Absolutely. The stories we tell ourselves about our experiences and the stories about us that we share with others and hear from others have an effect on how we see and understand ourselves. These stories have an impact on our identity. Margarita Tarragona.
And that workbook that I put a snapshot on is a great resource. And throughout this talk, I'm just sharing resources as well. So there's a lot of writing prompts in her book, Positive Identities, that anyone can use to work on and learn more about themselves and expand their story.
And
so,
Phoebe has put that in the chat so people can see that. And remember, you'll get the slides with the recording tomorrow. So you can also, you'll be receiving that if you signed up for the Lunch and Learn. You will get that as well.
Awesome. Good. So now I just put this up to have a quick look at that. Applying writing. Writing, its application is integral to my coaching. And I offer it to everyone. Most people say yes. And I just wanted to put up this change model and connect it to that. This is one of, many coaching models. This is the one we use at WBI that I draw on to help my coaches make the important change in their lives. And for each step in this change model, which is all grounded in positive psychology research, there are evidence-based writing prompts that come from positive psychology that can really help clients clarify their goals. I'm looking at the beginning of it, on the left, that's C, gain hope and move forward just through that entire process. And I just wanted to name some of the big time prompts that we use, and I bet you'll recognize these too, Caroline. We use these best self moments. I invite my clients to write about a memory of a time when they were at their best. I invite them to write about role models, and doing that helps clients discover their own values and goals, which are often connected to our role models. I invite my clients to write about signature character strengths to explore what's already working in their lives and what resources they have. And lastly, just on this slide, I ask my clients to write about their best possible self, their best possible future self, which really helps clients set goals and envision a better future. So, and we're definitely going to dive a little bit more, and we'll give you some specific prompts as well. But first, what I wanted to do was really look at the research of how writing improves health. So, but first, I was wondering if you would read this.
Sure. I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn. Anne Frank.
So as I was prepping for our chat today, I came across this quote and I just thought it was perfect, because what she was doing intuitively in such a powerful and moving way when she was writing in her diary back in 1942 was she was taking care of herself, right? And that's now known as expressive writing. A lot of what she was doing is falls into that category. I mean, she was certainly journaling, but you can see elements of this thing that we're going to talk about today, expressive writing or emotional writing, that's really been shown to improve physical and mental health and resiliency. And so a little more science, more on the science behind the connection between health and writing. There's just a ton of research. I promise I won't go into all of it. These are the two I'm going to highlight the most, mainly because the studies and the work they've done has inspired hundreds and hundreds of more studies. They've more than 300. And it all started with Pennebaker's work on the impacts of trauma, where he found that what others had also already found, basically. Trauma leads not just to mental health problems, but also many, many health problems, including the higher likelihood of things like chronic illness. And then from there, he looked at the health impact of confiding in others or not confiding about a trauma. And he found there that those that kept it to themselves were worse off. Keeping a secret made you have worse health problems. And then he explored, recognizing it's not always safe to confide in other people, right? That he explored what would the impact be if people just wrote about their trauma, so they don't have to have judgment from somebody else. And he found that even writing about trauma led to better health outcomes, which is just such an incredible discovery. And Laura King was his student, and together they explored this. And then she moved into, what if people write about positive experiences and even possible positive experiences, so that future best self that I referenced before. And she found that people's mental and physical health showed significant and enduring improvement, even with those prompts. So just, as I was looking through the research for today, a possible explanation of this, and I think it connects with what we were talking about when we were talking about Margarita Tarragona too, is that writing about life experience can basically be understood as engaging in the process of self-construction. By articulating our experiences through writing, we integrate these experiences into the self. And so we can view writing as a process of articulating and expanding the self. And as this happens, it creates more understanding and the creation and discovery of goals, and ultimately health benefits. And as it turns out, it doesn't need to be focused on negative experiences, as we said. And one study even found that women who wrote about their philosophy of life had better health outcomes. So there's really a lot, like the more awareness that you can create through deep writing, the better it is for you. And we will offer a few real concrete prompts that you can work with that are research-based as we move through the slideshow here, and you'll have that afterwards, as Caroline said. So the positive results, they just keep coming in from these studies, right? And it's been found again and again that mood and health improvements occur and persist, not just for months, but months and months and years beyond the interventions. And
well, I know also, Jennifer, that, working with different populations just regarding health, right, as the health and wellness director, one of the things that we've noticed is that someone tells a story, and oftentimes they'll tell that story over and over again. So Margarita Tarragona's work for me was very impactful, because it sort of solidified that idea that what is the story that I'm telling myself, because I'm going to be repeating that over and over, especially if it's around an illness or around my health.
Yes.
Or around those kind of things. And can I, in fact, introduce elements into that story that might help me move towards the outcome that I would like to have? I might not currently have it, but I would like to have.
Exactly. Exactly, right? So the stories that we tell ourselves, sometimes they're repetitive and they are focused on the negative. And so as we use some of these prompts, we begin to expand our stories and realize, wow, that bad day I had actually, my wife made me a great breakfast in the morning, and everyone at work was happy to see me, even though my report didn't go over so well. So the story of a bad day is rarely purely a bad day, and even the story of a hard time in your life, usually there's some pretty beautiful things in there too. And as you look and appreciate those, it can change. It changes us. And so yeah, so just before I move on from this slide, I wanted to add that, you know, what these two created, and especially for me, Laura King's work, where she went into imagining a best possible self, it's so influential. It's been so powerful that it's kind of hard to imagine doing my work without it.
Beautiful.
I'll show that a little later, her specific prompt. And since we're talking about expressive writing, I thought it might be helpful to have a definition of it, not to put you to work again, Caroline, but would you
That's
mind?
okay. Sure. I'm so curious about this too. Expressive writing. Expressive writing pays more attention to feelings than the events, memories, objects, or people in the contents of the narrative. So like narrative writing, expressive writing may have the arc of a story, beginning, middle, and end. Sometimes expressive writing behaves like a story that swells to a crest and resolves itself on firm ground. But often, expressive writing is turbulent and unpredictable, and that is okay. Expressive writing is not so much what happened as it is what you feel about what happened or what is currently happening. This is by John Evans, co-author with James Pennebaker.
Perfect. Yes, and I would just add to that, you know, that it's how you make sense of what happened, right? That's what we're really talking about. And so that original study back that James Pennebaker did, where they found this incredible result that writing about a trauma could actually lead to better health outcomes, not incomes. Here it is for your reference, and you'll all get this in your slide deck. I won't read through the entire thing, but basically the design was that the participants, the subjects in this study, were asked to write for 4 days in a row for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. Everything was going to stay completely confidential. They didn't even have to hand it in at the end, and there was going to be no feedback. So they knew they were in a completely judgment-free zone. And apparently it was quite shocking to the subjects of the study to have this experience, to be asked to write about their trauma. And the instructions below basically do say, you know, please write about a traumatic experience in your life. If you haven't had something that you would call trauma, everyone's had conflict and difficult times. So that's the assignment. That's what the people were tasked with writing about. And what they found after this study, after these people had just spent 4 days writing for 15 minutes a pop, was really remarkable. And these results have just continued to roll in with the follow-up studies. And some of the effects, I'm actually going to go into a little bit of detail because it's so compelling here. There were the biological effects. They found that in the time period after having done this exercise, this intervention, subjects' immune systems did better. Medical markers of health were better. Asthma patients and rheumatoid arthritis patients showed improvements in lung function and joint mobility. There were higher white blood cell counts in AIDS patients. Cancer patients reported less pain, better sleep, higher daytime functioning. I mean, these were amazing results. And there were physiological indicators that there was lower muscle tension in their faces. There was lower blood pressure and heart rates. So these benefits at this time they found to last as long as 4 months. And behavioral changes were pretty remarkable too. Students at college adapted better and got better grades. And I love this piece because they attributed this to working memory, which I feel is so relevant to all of us right now when we're preoccupied and we're worried about stuff. We're using our working memory, our bandwidth. And so when we write about our difficult times, it frees up that area of the brain that's preoccupied with this and helps us perform better in other areas of life, like school and work. And then people also did better in terms of their social lives. They actually put recorders on people and listened to how they interacted. They had more ease in their language that they were using, and their humor was different. And then let's see, just in terms of psychological effects, people definitely felt sad afterwards. But longer term, the results were that they felt happier, less negative, they had less depressive symptoms, less rumination, and generally less anxiety about their overall well-being. Pretty amazing.
Remarkable, right?
Yeah.
It's really remarkable. And it almost reminds me of, it's like they had a place to put, rather than inside their mind or their body or their heart, all of this trauma, right? It's like they could put it somewhere else, and then it almost, as you said, freed up the space. It's pretty remarkable that it was only 4 days and 15 minutes. That's a very small amount of effort for a pretty big impact.
Yes, yes. So I just got curious as I was putting this together. I thought I'd love to hear, everyone's been listening so raptly, hopefully. What benefits you might have noticed? Anyone who's here who wants to share in the chat, what have you experienced from writing yourself?
So everyone in the prompt, this prompt is, what are some benefits you've experienced from writing? And I think that Phoebe's written that in there. And I remember what Dan Tomasula was talking about in terms of attention, especially right now, Jennifer, when you were saying that, like we're not able to focus that much. And he was saying, don't be surprised about that. So it strikes me that we could write down and do this, exercise and help us at this time to focus. And we've got some folks that are responding in the chat. Relief. Someone said, I've experienced relief. Yeah. Reminded me of the good things in my life, and it inspired greater gratitude. Beautiful. Helps me clarify my thoughts and feelings. Also allows me an escape if that is what I am seeking. I've been doing Julia Cameron's Artist Way, sure, on and off since last summer, and it's amazing how it weaves my life together. Beautiful. Calmer, I'm more able to cope with the unexpected or the negative. Wow.
Yeah,
that's great.
Those are amazing results, and not surprising. I mean, right in line with
the research.
Thanks for reading those.
Sure.
Another thing that James Pennebaker looked at and reports on in his book, which I'll highlight in a minute, is who benefits from writing. And the great news about this prompt is pretty much everybody, all personality types benefited, but especially there was a little bit more of an advantage for people who maybe are a little hostile, who are a little aggressive, and maybe a little less self-aware, because those are the people that would be less inclined for that activity. Actually said males benefited slightly more than females. And all educational backgrounds, as long as everyone understood that grammar didn't matter and there wasn't going to be any judgment. The recency of trauma mattered to a certain extent. He said if you're still reeling from something, if it's been maybe 1 to 3 weeks and it's been a really terrible trauma, don't go there yet, right? But if a few weeks have passed and you're beyond that reeling moment, that's where it becomes really effective. He also said that even it works if you're in the middle of an ongoing trauma. And I thought that was particularly relevant to what we're experiencing right now too, right? And some examples were things like maybe a partner has chronic illness, or going through a long and painful divorce. But so there is some benefit in terms of writing. And then the dangers of writing, I love that he did this too. He called them the dangers of writing. They aren't all dangers, but this list goes from least dangerous to what he called sort of most dangerous. Losing control. He said some people were worried, I'm going to become too emotional and I'll lose control. Well, it turns out that few people, a very small, like a handful of people in his first few studies, he wanted to and gave them access to a psychologist to talk about what was happening, but they came back the next day. So there was nobody that just sort of went off the rails and disappeared. Overanalyzing, he said, is a moderate risk. If you're really finding, like you mentioned before, Caroline, where you're saying the same thing over and over again. He called it also navel gazing, where you really get stuck, then you might want to stop, because rumination is not good. This is all about, there's a progression over those 4 days where there's more and more insight. You're not thinking, oh, I'm going to have a progression, but that's what generally happened to people. So, and also blackmail and humiliation, which kind of made me smile at first when I saw it, but absolutely, like if you're writing something personal, that is really painful, you need to throw it away, shred it, burn it, and, or keep it somewhere safe. You don't need to keep these things to have the effect. And then lastly, the biggest danger was potential life changes. And, you know, I've seen this in my coaching too, which is when you go down the path of exploring your story, things change. People might change jobs. They might move. They might change their relationship status. So I don't know if you'd call it a danger exactly, but that's what he called it. But he described participants who change, their economic situations changed, and not necessarily for the better, but they were happier about it. So, yeah.
Wow. We're getting a few things in the chat that I just wanted to read to you in relationship to benefits, right? Elaine had said, I have a moan and move on book so that I can get it out of my body. I just love that. And then Laura says, writing has led me on a path of discovery. As I write, things unfold, and that's like the progression you were talking about, right? And not what I expect. Sometimes I lose myself in what I write, but I would like to be more focused, not just an emotional outlet. That's interesting. And then, and Alan said, name it, claim it, go from my old memory and letting go and replace it with gratitude, letting go of some trauma and sadness and loss, and with blessings from the experience or gratitude for what is present. Esperanza said, brings me focused life moments. And then Stacy says she actually teaches adolescents with trauma backgrounds, but often they also have severe literacy deficits and almost always struggle with writing. What advice might you give me when working with 7 to 12, mostly boys? My single female students use expressive writing a lot, but the boys, not so much. And then Phoebe also shared, of course, rumination corresponds to depression. Pennebaker suggests stop writing if there is a rumination or overwhelm, just reiterating what your words were saying, Jennifer. Lots of research with many different populations in Pennebaker's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for those. And I'm going to think about the 7 to 12, mostly boys. What I'm thinking is this person who's already an expert is finding other ways to get into those stories if writing really isn't something. But as you guys all heard, you know, Pennebaker said, the grammar doesn't matter, but still there has to be a motivation, a desire, an ability to sort of push through and get something down. So I could see that would be really challenging. I just wanted to end with the piece about James Pennebaker with this picture of his book that John Evans co-authored with him. And if you're up for another.
Sure. Quote. Expressive writing is a self-reflective tool with tremendous power. By exploring the upheavals in our lives, we are forced to look inward and examine who we are. This occasional self-examination can serve as a life course correction.
Yeah, and occasional is a key word in that, because Pennebaker really speaks about this as an intervention, not a way of life. Writing about your trauma is not, you don't need to be writing every day. This is something that when it's helpful is a great thing to do. And so I was just going to also say, if you're going to grab onto one resource for this type of writing, this is the one. And this has all of the research, or a lot of the research that I described, as well as the specific prompt that he used. And in the back, John Evans, who's a clinical practitioner, also a board certified health coach, who was in my study group actually for my my national board health exam. He's a clinician, and he added a lot of other prompts and writing programs in the second half of that book. And then I just wanted to highlight this one and have it in the slide deck for everyone. This is my absolute favorite prompt. Each one of these prompts has their use and is powerful, that we're talking about today. But this one I revisit over and over again, and it really works for both me and my clients. I feel like it's deceptively simple, but it's so generative. And as we've said before, it's been found to improve health. It's been helpful in goal setting. And there's just more and more studies. And So Laura King sometimes attaches a 1-year or 5-year time frames. And actually, before I move on, I would love it if you'd read this too, Carolyn.
Sure. Think about your life in the future. Imagine that everything has gone as well as it possibly could. You have worked hard and succeeded at accomplishing all of your life goals. Think of this as the realization of all your life dreams. Now, write about what you imagined.
Yeah. So you really sit with that, and then you write, and you just keep writing. And even if you have to repeat a little bit, you'll find that your mind will then just go to the next place. And as I mentioned, Dr. King suggested 1-year, 5-year increments. And, but for now, I've played around with this a lot, and I've put a few different adaptations of this in the slide deck. But for now, I did this one that I used recently with a group this spring, where I was really just thinking, about Dan Tomasula's work, micro goals. He talks about how in the current context, or this past spring, it was sort of like wash the dishes, or my big goal today is to I don't know, make the bed and read, a couple pages of the book. So really sizing down goals versus maybe what we would normally be trying to work on, with everything turned upside down like we've all had during this period of time with the pandemic. So here's just an idea. Imagine your life in 12 weeks. In 12 weeks time, you've worked hard at coping, taking care of yourself, and succeeded. Think of this as the realization of you taking the best possible care of what matters most to you in the current context. Now write about what you imagine. So I really tried to leave it open so the person working with it could take it the direction that was what was most important to them. And that 12 weeks you could change to anything. And I found that with some clients, they had a natural transition coming up. So they actually said, well, when this job ends, or when this transition that's suddenly come upon me because of this current context, when that happens, so you can customize your time frame.
That's great. Thank you for that.
A few more prompts that I've played around with in my coaching that I just wanted to include to give people an idea of how to use some of this stuff. This is a best self type of prompt, right? Think of a time recently in the past 2 years. This was, for a client. When you were at your best as a mother or father, it can be a challenging time or event, or when things were going really great. Think of what happened and how you were. What actions did you take or not take? What did you say or not say? Write down any details you can remember to paint the picture. And the effect of a prompt like this is to really help you see your own strengths and your own resources that you've had in the past. And it can really inspire hope and motivation for the current situation that you're in. So this kind of a prompt.
It also strikes me that this can kind of take you from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system, right? That this is going to remind you that out of that fear and fight or flight into, wait a second, I have resources. I've been here before. And so I can relax and digest. I can look at things. I can open up. I can have hope, and in the face of something of fear, and actually, resource my own inner resilience there.
That's great. And then here's one I've used with a high school students. You can imagine what it's like to be a junior, and not necessarily in this context. I mean, this certainly could be adapted for this context, but this was before this came up. Working with high school students who say things like, gosh, I feel like everything I'm doing is motivated for my resume, which is motivated for getting into a college, and I feel like I'm not in touch with what I really care about. So this was just an idea, an approach to have.
Awesome. We did have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Jennifer, do you always ask your clients to write in response to the same prompt, and do you ask them to do that several times?
So I asked I have a little later in the slideshow the instructions that I give for the Laura King prompt. And I do use that one with every client, pretty much. The one her basic one about imagine the future where everything's gone as well as it possibly could. So I do ask all my clients to do that one.
And would you repeat that? Like, say you were working with a client over a certain period of time, or if they went away and then they came back to you, would you use that sort of ongoing?
I might. I don't think that that's like a common thing that I've done, but we can adjust it to I have used it, and actually this is the one that I've just pulled up in terms, or hang on, let me just see if this is the one. Yeah, I really adapted it here, but I had somebody who was really thinking about how to leave their job. And this offered a chance, but the job was still going to go on for a few years. This was sort of looking ahead to retirement, how to get meaning in their job for the next few years. And so you can use that Laura King prompt, and you can play with it to connect to sort of whatever it is that you're facing. And really what it does is it takes you away from problem solving, and it moves you into vision. Right. And then you can look at that vision and get a lot of inspiration, and you know, it surfaces your values and what's most important. So then when you turn around and you get really practical about what you want to do, it's connected to that really authentic stuff.
Right.
So,
and we should mention to everyone that creativity is one of your top strengths. So I'm sure you've taken these prompts and then you can be creative with them, right, to meet the individual needs of each person and each client.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And once you start using these, you just can't stop. So this is the writing instructions that I've given for people. I honestly, total honesty here, I find it hard to tell people to do things 4 days in a row. Like, you know, my clients are busy people. So I'll say, like, it would be ideal if you could do it, you know, 4. But if you can just do it once between now and the next time we meet. And some people have the space and the mindset to do it. But I really believe, and actually somewhere in this slide deck, I think, you know, writing even for a very small amount of time, it can be powerful. So, so those are the writing instructions that I give my people, and they're really a compilation of different people's writing instructions. The key point is stream of conscious, be in a private space, let it flow. Don't, you know, get rid of that critic. Put that critic and that judgment that this is not practical side of your brain away. Just let what comes out. So, and the next piece of this talk is really why now, right? And no one's going to be too surprised about why it might be good to write for your health right now. First of all, I think it's good anytime, but there's all of this research that's coming out that's showing that people are experiencing more anxiety, more depressive symptoms. It's not a surprise. And so this, I think, and I use this exercise myself in the current moment, and found it to be really valuable and helpful for me personally. And of course, so there's just a few other thoughts there, but really just writing helps us come to terms with and make meaning of what happens to us. And we're in this moment right now where a lot is happening to us. And then how to write. These instructions were focused more on James Pennebaker's work. And one thing I really appreciated about his instructions were, if you're writing about trauma, write about what keeps you up at night. Don't write about something from long ago or something maybe that seems bad that happened to you, but it isn't really troubling you. Don't go looking for a problem. That was his instructions. And then I felt like this would not be complete without Kristen Neff. I see you smiling, Caroline. Are you a Kristen Neff fan?
Totally, yes. Her work is amazing.
For those of us in this group today that haven't seen her work, I mean, in a nutshell, she basically researches and studies how the impact of what it is to be kind to ourselves, right? And her work is really invaluable at any time, but especially now. I think she's really zeroed into the tendency that many of us have to beat ourselves up. And she teaches us the benefits of being kind to ourselves, teaches us how to be kind to ourselves. And this is really a critical skill for anyone trying to make a change, who is likely to encounter some failures, because that's what happens when we try to make difficult change. I call those failures with a lowercase f. Those are temporary setbacks, right? And so, of course, there's a lot of ways to turn her research into writing prompts. Fantastic book. Is one of my, if I had to recommend like 3 books from positive psychology right now, that would probably be in there. But my favorite exercise is one that she offers in the first chapter of her book. And, oh, Caroline, would you read this quote before I share about that?
Sure. Insecurity, anxiety, and depression are incredibly common in our society, and much of this is due to self-judgment, to beating ourselves up when we feel we aren't winning in the game of life. So what's the answer? To stop judging and evaluating ourselves altogether? To stop trying to label ourselves as good or bad and simply accept ourselves with an open heart? To treat ourselves with the same kindness, caring, and compassion we would show to a good friend.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's so simple, but the exercise that she shares in her book is take a thing that's really troubling you, that's bothering you, that maybe you're beating yourself up about, and really write honestly about it, not repressing your feelings. Don't be melodramatic about it, but really write very honestly about this thing that's really bothering you. And then take a minute and imagine a friend. And she calls it imaginary friend, right? Who is basically unconditionally loving and accepting and kind and compassionate. And imagine this person knows you really well and sees the beautiful things about you too. And what would that friend say to you about this situation? And she says, now write a letter to yourself from the perspective of that friend. And I have to say that that was earth-shattering for me. Earth-shattering. And I've seen it happen that way for my clients too. It's like something just clicked, like, and you can also read her whole book, which is phenomenal, but that wow, I don't have to be this voice in my head. I can let that voice go. I understand what's going on. And so when I have my clients write this, then we reference back to that later if we're talking and we're coaching and they're bringing up something and I'm hearing them really sort of angry with themselves in a really non-productive way. And I can say, oh, I wonder what a friend would say to you, a really caring friend. And people will just pivot once they've done this writing exercise. So
it reminds me of the brain's negativity bias in some ways. It's like when we get, and even in our culture to a certain extent, we were taught you've got to work hard, you've got to, hit things hard. So to be compassionate, to actually take a step back and to be compassionate, in essence, mother ourselves, right? Or be kind to one ourselves, it's almost a radical shift that happens in the brain. You have to stop, you have to pause, you have to redirect, and to actually do that requires, for me, a radical act. That's why I think, I think kindness is a radical act in some ways, especially when you're not feeling very kind.
and I just want to add that, it is possible. It is possible, even with a lifetime of a negative voice in your head, to do the research, to use these interventions, and to find some release from it. And what she says over and over again, in study after study, it doesn't, when you take that negative voice out of your head, the one that pushes you or says try harder, or you weren't good enough, or whatever, you don't become lazy. You don't, it's not weak. And I've had, veterans that I've worked with that embrace this thinking. People have accomplished so much and found this to be so powerful, because you know, what I think it was her description, or maybe Chris Germer's description, you know, if you're in combat and you've got your choice between having two people on one or the other person on your shoulder, do you want the one that's going to say, you're a loser, you better not miss the shot, you know, or the one that says, you've got this, you can handle this. And so, you know, when we take that tone of voice towards ourselves, which is really what comes across through the letter writing, and we sort of practice this, we're not afraid to take risks. We're more likely to go after this important change that we want to make. So
Beautiful.
yeah. And I just realized we're almost at time, but guess what? And maybe this is I don't know. Do we have time to put this in the chat?
Yes, absolutely. Let's go for it. We're writers.
What
sparked your interest? Can you let us know, everyone? So we'll put that in the chat. What sparked your interest about the talk, about writing, about, anything that we've said today? Or it might have sparked your interest and you might have thought about something in your own life. If you would share that with us, that would really be amazing. Thank you.
Great. This has been so fun. And I imagine people can remember. I'm just going to put my contact details up there. And
sure,
if people want to reach out to me, but even just to ask me a question or to talk about these ideas, if there's a resource that you heard about that you want to know a little more about, feel free to contact me.
And I wanted to remind everybody, I don't know if you guys know this, but next week we will not have any lunch and learns. We're taking the week off for the July 4th holiday. Everyone is, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I might just come on just for the fun of it if you want to talk to me. No, but we actually are going to take a break. That's part of, positive psychology too, to actually spend that time between sort of resting, digesting, playing, getting into that part of ourselves and taking some time off. Oh, we've got some new messages. Let's see what folks are saying. Thank you, Caroline and Jennifer, for a very enlightening and inspiring hour. What has sparked your interest? I want my brain to be well. Great. Kristen's Neff's work, sure. The power of writing, even just a little writing. Yeah, me too. I found that fascinating. I benefit from writing my morning pages. And I was interested as an English teacher about the power and potential of healing through the writing process for my students and our staff as well. Thank you. I was so glad to get the resources and research to back this work. This was great. I regretted not starting to journal in March because I wanted to remember this time, but I had not thought of it as a way to deal and help me through this time. So that's a great idea. Thank you so much. I constantly preach to my clients to journal, but I'm very erratic myself. You have given me my new whys. Thank you so much from Maria. Want to write a letter to myself and acknowledge my strength, acceptance, and self-compassion. Beautiful. Thank you. This has been a wonderful experience, and I find it beneficial to write things down on paper to keep my positivity going. And it's interesting, Jennifer, because recently, I think it was last week, on Thursday night, we had Wendy Suzuki, Dr. Wendy Suzuki, who is a researcher on the power of exercise on the brain. And one of the things that she does is she actually uses affirmations as she works out. I am strong. So as she's exercising or moving her body, and that's what she studied. And she finds that what we're saying to ourselves as we exercise, as the brain is very neuroplastic, right? Actually, changes the brain and the hippocampus, and it helps our memory and all kinds of things. So it's right along the same research that you're talking about with writing. So whether you do it when you're moving, you want to be your own best friend, or whether you're writing, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Also makes me think about music. Oh, but we're at 1 o'clock.
No, you can finish with, I will finish with that final thought, what you were going to say.
The music that people listen to when they're running too, or exercising. I know that's really an important thing for people.
Yeah. I have a funny story. I was working out with my niece this morning, and she said, can we listen to my rap music? And I said, sure, fine. And the words were quite negative. And I said, Wendy Suzuki's a fan. She's a fan of Wendy Suzuki. She's a researcher herself. And I said, well, remember what Wendy said about that. I said, why don't we listen to Hamilton? So we listened to the Broadway show Hamilton. So we got the rap in there, but we got the positivity. I said, because, we're working out and we're changing our brain, so we might as well change it in a positive, way. So whatever you guys do over the weekend, please take good care of yourself. Be good to yourself. Maybe you'll write. Maybe you'll listen to some good music. Maybe you'll exercise or get out in the park. But we so wish you well. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing your passion with us. We really, really appreciate it. This is such a different perspective. We really haven't talked much about writing, so it's really a welcome addition to our Lunch and Learn series. And take care, everybody. Just wave your hands up. Give Jennifer a little love and thanks. And
Bye,
we'll see you next week. Well, not next week. We'll see you the week after. Take care, everybody.